of trauma that were internal.
Right.
When we later in the discussion coming up in a few weeks, we're going to talk about self-inflicted trauma. I
Oh
mean, we're
yeah.
doing it to ourselves.
Yep.
I know it starts from society and the stigma that's placed on us, but a lot of times we're placing that trauma on ourselves. And I love how you said the artificial boundaries that we put
Right.
in place that now become our norms
Right.
when, it's just like fear, false evidence appearing real. I mean, it's not
Right.
there and it should be broken. So that's good, man. Good insight, bro. He came
Thank you,
packing
sir. Thank you,
today.
sir. I'm awake now. I got my coffee, so I'm good now. And I'm no longer sick. I just got congestion, so I'm in there.
Well, man, I don't know what it's like there in Memphis, but here in Kansas City, we literally went from a 78-degree day, and then by the next morning, it was 17.
Yes, exactly. Ours
Did
was
y'all hit that?
73. Yeah, so ours was 73 to 20. But yes, exact same thing. And my silly butt, so I was used to it being 73. So I went out with no sleeves on, walking my dog.
Oh, man.
Bro, it was 20. I'm like, my whole body just, "Ugh, what is this?" And I was like, should I go back in and go get a jacket? No, man up, you can handle it.
Right, right, right. Come
My
on, man.
body was like,
Don't
but at
talk.
least I'm being honest. At least I'm
Yeah,
being
no,
honest though.
that's real talk. That's real talk. That's real talk.
but I stayed my butt out there, walked with for about 10, 15 minutes, came back in and went to bed. It felt like I had an elephant sit on my face and head at the same time.
Right.
Crazy. That's what happens when you create unnecessary trauma to yourself. Self-inflicted trauma.
Oh, we
At
get ahead of
least I
ourselves.
admitted it.
No, but as you said, I appreciate your vulnerability. You expressed the emotion. I appreciate the vulnerability there.
Yeah.
So we just got to do a better job, though, of seeking
Right.
help, as men,
Right.
and just realizing that, forget what society says, man. You got to do what's best for you.
Right.
And if you're hurting, I remember when I realized in 2018, I was telling everybody I'm hurting, and
Yeah.
I meant internally in my mind,
Right.
you know,
Right.
and then that manifested, started to manifest in my body, and physical
Right.
um, ailments and stuff like that. And I kept telling everybody I was hurting, I'm hurting, and it was like, no, no, you're okay, just pray, and you're the man of God, and you're strong, you're the warrior. And yes, I was all of that, but
Right.
man,
And you
I
were
needed
still
help.
hurting.
I was still
Yeah.
hurting.
Yeah.
All
Yeah.
those years
Man.
of suppressed trauma that I had pushed down. And then I think one of the things I would say as a father, that if I could go back and rewind and unteach my three sons, it would be that, to
Hmm.
express your feelings. Don't push it down. I taught them to be the warrior, be the man, suck it up,
Right.
and I would go back and redo that.
Yeah. Yeah. Hindsight is 2020. They say.
Right.
Man.
Well, yeah, let's
All right.
move on to our next. Oh, go ahead. Go ahead.
I just want to say it's a good thing again, and I do want to make this statement very clear that the first step to recovery, anyone who's ever been to AA or heard of AA,
Right.
they know that the first step to recovery is acknowledgement. You have to acknowledge that there is an issue. So and that's what we're doing right here. So it's a beautiful thing.
Well, I think one of the things that I love that we do is we always initiate with vulnerability and transparency. That we
Right.
ask that of the audience, and we're calling out the men, but we're leading in that. We're not telling them to
Right.
do things that we're not doing. So we put
Right.
ourselves out in display in public view for the world to analyze and scrutinize. So you know
Right.
we got to lead. But yeah, man, the unique challenges. This is point number two. The unique challenges men face in processing and expressing their trauma, including the pressure to man up and the lack of emotional support. I mean, we kind of just touched on
Right.
that a little bit, but where's the
Right.
support?
Right. Yeah. And a big step to all of that is, oh, he's lucky.
Oh,
Mosquito. Mosquito. I hate him.
wait a
I hate
minute.
him with a
You
passion.
got them already?
Yeah. Yeah, bro. Like literally, and they're slipping in through little cracks in my door. So I gotta get that thing resealed. But bro, I just anyway. Let's get all the mosquitoes fly. I be done slap the camera out. Bah! Oops. Oh man. But yeah, one of the things about the lack of emotional support is and I'll say this for me. I will speak for myself.
Okay. Okay.
Generally speaking, the first thing that I do is I'll go within and I start analyzing the situation on my own. But it's hard for me to reach out to someone and be like, "Hey, can you help me process this? Or what do you think about this?" That takes a minute for me. Um, I can realize that I have an issue, but just reaching out to somebody, that's hard. And it's beautiful though, because like I said, I have you, and I have my mom, and I have other people, and my girlfriend, thankfully, that they'll see you going through something and be like, "What's going on?" You know.
Right.
And I think that's important. Make sure that when you notice a change in someone that you love, notice a change in the energy. Ask questions immediately, even if they say they don't want to talk about it right now. At least you have acknowledged that you care, and they may be in the process of processing that,
Right.
whatever it is, however they do it. But just to show that's a great way to set up an emotional support system for someone. Just to, hey, I noticed that your energy has changed. You okay? What's going on?
Man, you
Boom.
just listen to that makes me think of 2 points. Um, Man, you got me stirred up on that one, bro. Um, the vulnerability piece, the pressure for a man. I mean, it seems like almost impossible to be in a space where you can be vulnerable and let your guard down. And as
Right.
you said, you're erupting inside, but to have that vulnerability of safety, place of safety
Right.
where you can be vulnerable to do that. It reminds me, and I think it was a saying or a meme I believe I saw that um, you need people in your life. Where it actually was talking about friends, or maybe I can't remember, but anyway, this is the gist of it. It was talking about have people in your life that when you're quiet, that speaks volumes to them.
Right.
So when I'm down, when I'm hurting, and I get quiet and withdraw because I'm in fear of being vulnerable to share my trauma, that there's people in my tribe around me that understand Gary's in trouble.
Hmm.
Coach G needs help and he needs someone to talk to. And there's no judgment in that space. They just immediately
Right.
step forward into that place of helping you recover, which then leads me into my next point on that we both love. It goes back to having the three, the
Right.
Paul, the
Paul
Barabbas, the Timothy
Barabbas.
in your life.
Yeah.
See,
Yeah.
I've learned that men who have those three things, those three people or figureheads in their life, the Paul, which is that senior figure, it doesn't have to necessarily be an older person in your life, but more advanced or more knowledgeable, more experienced
Right.
than you, that pours into you and feeds into you. And then that
Right.
Barabbas is your boy, your homie that is going to hold you accountable but also
Hmm.
celebrate you at the same time. He's going to be the one that has your
Right.
back. Bro, you shouldn't have done that. You shouldn't have said that. But then, man, hey, don't let her treat you like that, or don't take that
Right.
from, the boss. Maybe go launch out in the deep, man. Go do that new job.
Right.
And then you need that Timothy, that youngster, or the less experienced person that you pour yourself into. So I think a
Right.
man that has all three of those, when each one of us falls into one of those, when each one of us goes through that dark moment of trauma, one of the three is going to recognize it, if not all three,
Right.
that you're in trouble.
Yeah.
So I'm working on that. I don't know about you. Where you at with that? I'm working on rebuilding my three.
Yeah. Yeah. The cool thing is that now I have two. I have two men I can count on like that. You were one for sure. My best friend Mike. Actually, I do have my three. I do have
You
my
have your
three.
three?
They're kind of,
Okay.
yeah. They're kind of all like the Barabbas, but they have the elements of Paul, and so one is more Timothy because he's younger than me. But yeah, definitely I have that. Yeah,
Okay.
like I'm able to reach out to you if I need some help with something. I know I can call on you. I call on my best friend. Yeah, so yeah, I think I have that. Thankfully.
Okay. Okay. I feel like I'm there with that. I've got one of my cousins. He's like a brother. We're first cousin, but he's really like a brother to me, and he's older, a few years older than me, but
Mhm.
he's definitely a Paul to me. Um, he really speaks into my life prophetically and then practically. And then I have another cousin that would probably fit into that mold too. But I speak to this one in particular more often, more on the day to day. And then I have a couple. Izzy was here um, a couple weeks ago. Her husband David. I mean, these are some of the guys that are my boys that I can count
Right.
on. I made a call to him one time in this situation. And I'm like, bro, I need you to follow me to a joint and help me out with some stuff. And he was there. And
Yeah.
just by nature in my job, I have several Timothys that I pour
Hmm.
myself into every day at work. I'm a recruiter, so for a
Right.
college, so I do that every day. And a basketball coach, so I pour myself into athletes all the time. So
Yes,
feels
sir.
good.
Yeah, it's very important to have that support system because we all need it. We all need those three people that's gonna hold us down in everyday life. And like you said, hold your feet to the fire. If you're messing up, hey, that wasn't cool, man. I love you, but you were wrong, and you know it.
Well,
You
it
gotta have
was
those people who look. Uh,
no. Go ahead.
no, I'm just saying it's good to have someone like that in your circle. You gotta have that person that look you right in your eyes, and hey, that wasn't cool, man, and you know it.
Yeah,
You gotta have that
yeah,
person.
yeah. It's good
That's
to have
the
that
anchor.
accountability. Right,
Right.
right. Which is
Yeah.
funny because I thought I'm actually sitting here waiting because I thought surely Mark was going to pop in here and
Right.
give his 2 cents on that because I would
Right.
love to actually hear who his three people are, or if he has those three people. But maybe he won't pop in. So I'll go ahead and move on to our next point. Really, the intersection of toxic masculinity and trauma, and how it perpetuates a cycle of violence and emotional suppression.
Right.
Hmm.
Yeah.
The intersection of toxic masculinity and trauma. What does that mean to you?
Yeah. So just those who can't process emotions and whatnot, they act out. You know.
Like a child.
Right. Exactly. Having a big temper tantrum. But it's more man. Want her out his chest all swole for no reason. And if you don't unswell your chest, brother, in process, but no, I mean, all of it going off and dealing with a whole bunch of different women and you know, wanting to fight everybody. When
Right,
grief and trauma is properly processed, there's no need for that. You don't have
right,
time to be destructive because you're trying to grow, and you know that acting a fool only causes more issues than it creates beneficial change. So let's be about the business of being emotionally and mentally mature enough to sit down in our shit and truly process it. Like you have to be able to sit down in those dark times and be with your shadow self and address it and
yeah,
understand why this thing is going. Why am I angry like this? As opposed to just acting out. That's a symptom of a deeper problem.
right, right,
Um, but when you're able to sit down in your muck and mire and process those feelings and realize, okay, this is the root of this, and this feeds this. Because it's, I swear, you go one layer, then ooh, there's another layer. Ooh, there's another. And this leads all the way to something that happened in my childhood that it reminded me of that I've done this through in life. You know what I'm saying? So
hmm
yeah, you got to be able to sit down in that dark time and really be able to deal with yourself.
Well, it's always about getting to the root cause. So, I mean, I love what you're saying about
Right.
sitting down in the dark place. I was afraid of that in the initial
Yeah.
beginning when I was going through trauma. I was afraid of the dark. And then I became obsessed with the
Yeah.
darkness. And I sat, and I know you're not saying sit in the dark in that way where it's destructive,
Right.
because I sat in a dark place, meaning a dark room, and had dark thoughts and dark feelings. And, that brings on like suicidal thoughts and feelings, and just takes you down a path that's this death and destruction. But I
Right.
think what you're saying is to really engage with your trauma and hit it,
Right.
head on, face to face, man to man.
Right.
Not run, not duck, not hide, but
Right.
stand up to it. And there's power in standing up to your trauma,
Right.
standing up to the adversity, standing up to those things that knock you down, not being bullied. Because as we talked about, self-inflicted, not even being bullied by yourself.
Right. Right. Yeah. And I mean, definitely, even acknowledging that, you have suicidal thoughts or homicidal thoughts. What's the root to that?
Right.
What's under that? What created this? And then, go into the dark, like you said, and shine the light of your consciousness onto it. And that makes it something that you can process. When it's a monster, you want to stay away from it. But when you recognize that it's the seed of something, then you're able to shine that light on it and recognize where that root started and find that and process. And
That's
that's the
good.
big thing. Being able to sit there and process your feelings and how they are connected to other aspects of trauma that have gone unchecked. Like for instance, I know because of my relationship with my biological father, I had a fear of abandonment, which
Mm.
is why I stayed in relationships that I knew were toxic and
Toxic. Right. Right.
harmful, because I didn't want to be alone. you
Mm-hmm.
know. And then
Been there.
same trauma, also feeling of unworthiness. So you take things from people, actions and ways of being. People act towards you in a way that you know that you wouldn't accept if it was somebody else. You dig what I'm saying? I
Right.
accepted
Right.
those things because of the fear not or feeling unworthy of a certain type of love. You dig what I'm saying? So now it's like now I can look back and be like, man, so I dealt with that. I let that be a part of my life because I didn't want to be alone, not because I thought it was good for me. I knew it wasn't. I knew it was terrible. I knew the way it made me feel was terrible, but I didn't want to be alone. And when I was able to sit back and really process where those things came from through therapy. Therapy was a big help, journaling,
Right. Right.
things
For
of
me
that
too.
nature. Yeah, I was able to, man, just realize that this is a childhood trauma that is going unchecked. And when I start processing that trauma, the relationship between me and that person started to separate.
Right.
But when I was in that space where I just took whatever that person was willing to give me, the relationship was great by the terms of it looked great to people, but it was terrible. It was terrible.
Yeah.
Extra R's in there.
Right. Right.
Terrible.
Right. Right. Well, I took a class and it's a company called Landmark, and one of the things they taught us obviously was stories and acts.
Mhm.
Stories and acts. So how we take it just shows how our mind gets distorted in the midst of trauma, that we take a simple situation and create a story around it.
Mhm.
And if you dumb it down and back it back up, it's not factual in most
Right.
cases. We've created, and I understand why. I mean, there's feeling and emotion, and there's
Right.
all this that magnifies things 100 times, but um, we do that all the time to ourselves, to people in our lives. We allow other people to create stories about ourselves.
Right.
And then that creates what they called an act. And
Yep.
like for me, that when you talked about abandonment, my act, my major, and we all have major acts, they're just different. Every time you experience a trauma, it creates another act within you because it's a self defense mechanism that you create to keep yourself safe. So like
Right.
we all have several of them, but I think my primary one was need to please. My abandonment turned into need to please. I didn't My father was in my home, but he probably hurt me, was the greatest pain factor in my childhood growing up. That's a whole nother story, but I'm thankful for my 63 days. I can't leave it on pops like that. I'm thankful for the last 63 days that I had, that the Lord gave me with him, and he renewed and restored our relationship. But anyway,
Beautiful.
yeah, it was, man. We have to talk about that sometime. But coming
Yeah.
out of
Sure.
that, yeah, coming out of that though, I realized my major act was need to please, because I spent my entire life trying to please him
Right.
and be what I thought I needed to be for him. And then I carried that over into every other facet. I got married and I had to please my wife. I had to please my children. I'd start jobs. I had to please them. I start
Right.
businesses. I have to please, so I just became this pleaser. And what you don't realize when you get lost and wrapped up in all that stuff, you lose self.
Hmm.
So when I started to go through my traumas in 2018, it just the dam started to break. I realized I'm looking in the mirror. I had no clue who I was. It
Right.
was just trauma, 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 trauma that I'm just pushing down and suppressing. Now the dam has broke, you know, and it's starting to come out. And I've lost perspective of who self is, who Gary is, who Coach G is. So I'm just wandering in the darkness at that point.
Right.
And I'm thankful for therapy because,
Yep.
you know, the prayers of the righteous avail much. I'm thankful for the people who prayed, but it was a lot of those people that turned their back.
Yep.
The brothers and
Yeah.
sisters of Christ that I thought had my back, those are the ones who turned their back on me. And it was therapy that made the significant change in my life. And then me doing a lot of inner work too. But
Right.
man,
Yeah. Yep. Yeah. I definitely. I mean, in the first council that you're gonna go to, period, is the person that you see in the mirror every day. We're the ones that we deal
right,
with our emotions and feelings. So to for you to go to therapy and get those tools to help you do the inner work, um, that was the first step to creating the new reality that you have.
right.
And it's great. It's great that you did that. You were cognizant enough to recognize the fact that it was absolutely necessary for you to get that counseling.
Yeah, I had to, man. It was life changing for me because I was really coming unglued. I was becoming, as we just talked about, being violent and destructive,
Yep.
and then suicidal. And then I got to the
Yeah.
point where my baby boy, I promised him I wouldn't take my life, but then
Right.
I gave him my word's bond. I wouldn't take it, but I for darn sure put myself in situations where my life could be taken. I mean,
Right.
so stupid that was, man. How I just
Yeah.
flipped it.
Yeah.
So I'm out there every night,
Done it.
running them streets, man, putting myself in danger, thinking, well, this is going to be my night,
Yeah.
all
Man.
because I wouldn't deal with my trauma.
Yep. Yep. And I mean that's a perfect capstone to what this point. you know, it's usually the violence is either it's outwardly reflected, to the world or inwardly reflected back onto ourselves. I be putting away 1.5 liter bottles every day, like this, every day, whole bottles, and just like man, and like losing my temper, and I mean, I still look back and be like, man, I understand why I lost my temper, but dang, Gene, did you have to do it like
Right,
that?
right,
You
right,
could have ignored, or you could have done this, or you could have done that. You look back and again, hindsight is 2020. I did a lot of things and a lot of damage to myself.
right,
Man, swallowing down all my emotions, and
right.
then they burst over. I'm arguing with people that I know I shouldn't because my mama told me not to argue with fools. If you argue with a fool, then you one of
Right, right,
them.
right. That's so crazy. Yeah. See, I was talking about
Yeah,
my Paul. He always talked about casting as a scripture about casting your pearls into the swine. And that's what
right,
he would tell
right,
me all the time. Why are you arguing with him, or why are you arguing with her when they don't
right,
even have a clear understanding of where you are or what you're going through and
right.
don't care? So
Yep,
yeah,
yep,
that's good. Well, let's move on, man. Next point. Um, the importance of creating safe spaces, man. And did the women articulate this well a couple weeks ago?
man.
The importance of creating safe spaces for men to discuss their trauma and seek support, and the role of mental health professionals in addressing these needs.
Yeah,
Mm,
yeah, yeah. We definitely touched on it for sure, man. Yeah, this is a great thing we have here. This format, so we get to not only unpack our personal traumas and things like that in a safe space, but we also open the door for others to do the same. I
right.
want to be the example of that. man, and mental health. We like I said, we just touched on it, man. But I think everyone needs it. We all got trauma that we need to unpack across life, and we would understand and have a deeper understanding of why we do the things we do, and
Right.
that gives us the ability to again go back to self, find out who we are beneath all the trauma and the pain and all of the stigmas and suppression. You know, one thing that my therapist said to me, I had two of them say this. It was crazy. Two female therapists. They were like, I gave them a breakdown of my relationship that I was in and how things are going. And they were like, Gina, you a glutton for punishment?
Right. I
So
remember us talking about this. Speaking of
I
that,
was like, no, I'm not a glutton for punishment. They were both like, for real, think about it. And I was like, dang. And like you, I was very much a pleaser. I wanted everybody to be happy with me, because again, I said I had abandonment issues and unworthiness. So you allow things that you wouldn't normally allow, and then you become a person that starts to give up aspects of yourself. And one of my actually upcoming single, um, one of the lyrics is, "I sold part of my soul to appease your demons."
hey,
Hey,
Ma.
ma. But yeah, you begin to sell parts of yourself. You begin to give up space within yourself that you know is sacred space. But
Oh, man.
you give that space up to appease a part of someone that can never, like, people are insatiable. When they're unhealed, their need to fill a gap will will become vacuous if you allow them to feed off. And that's what began to happen. It's like the more I gave up of myself, the more they wanted. But
Mm,
the less of me that they wanted, the more of that space holder. It just became vacuous. It was like a black hole pulling everything out of me. It's insane.
yeah, I
Sounds
And
relate
deep
at
to
the
and
that.
moment,
everything. When you try to tell me that there are some vampires in relationships and in life and all along those lines, 'cause I'm going like I've dealt with those. Sometimes they just be sucking that energy out of you and all along those lines. So it's almost like a vampire. You be sitting there going like, wait
right?
a minute, he got my
Oh, man,
lifeblood.
Mark, this dude.
I was just
Oh,
going
how
by
you,
what y'all was describing as. I'm going like that sounds like some of that vampire relationships where they're taking a lot
Yeah,
of your energy and getting that lifeblood because we all have our lifeblood and all in that space. And I would even argue that I don't know whether you agree with me, but it's not always even your relationships. It can also be your friends and your coworkers, or it can
or
be in
your
a lot of
family.
yeah,
environment. So it doesn't. It's not just always the relationship environments, even though we know that's an important part of our lives, but it can be the other environments that are part of our lives as well. Because definitely, I've seen some people that will definitely suck that energy, and you get home and you feel like, wait a minute, I feel like I just went on a marathon, and you haven't gone
right,
anywhere, but it was the kind of energy that you had to put into sustaining the relationships, whatever the
right.
relationships were.
And they
And
just
then
suck the
Yep,
essence out of you, right?
they suck the essence out of it. Gene, I'm sure you've even seen that, and not to put it in there, but I know that it has existed in the cultural world there as too. You got a good relationship with your current band, but I know there have probably been bands and other creative situations where you've been sitting there going like, these folks are draining me.
Yeah.
man. Yeah, yes. Yeah, I almost had to let one of my friends go for a while. I was like, brother, listen, now we gonna do the work together. Or somebody gonna have to go, and it ain't gonna be me. I mean, look at the name of the band, G Wiz, and the soul sister. G Wiz, who's that? That's me. Oh, okay, so I ain't going nowhere. It's either me or you, partner.
I've had it in coaching. I've had it in coaching and business too. So just, now obviously we've all talked about the relationship piece of that. But hey, Mark, actually, I got a question for you
Yeah.
that I was wondering what happened to you earlier. I thought surely you're going to pop in. But, we talked about our Paul, our Barabbas, our Timothy. What does that look like in your space?
I mean, there's a couple of them if I remember, and give me the breakdown. But definitely, there are some people that have been with me for a number of years, and they would probably be the ones that have been kind of like my mentors. I have a number of mentors that I still resonate with. Shucks, I would argue that my father and some of the older folks that are in my circle have been my mentors. And as Gene knows, I mentor a bunch of people myself as well. So I mentor a lot of folks, both in the podcasting world and a number of other worlds. But definitely there are some people, some that have gone on to the ancestral grounds, like Baba Chuck Davis, and others that I would consider some of my serious mentors, because I still resonate with them. And I talked to you about it before, some that have gone, I mean, decades ago. My mom is I mean, not my mom, my grandmother on my dad's side was somebody that resonates with me because of her own pioneering qualities. And she passed back in '82. So we're talking about some
Ooh, wow.
like 40 years ago and all
Yeah.
along those spaces. But I still resonate with the things that I learned from her and all along those lines. So definitely, even though she's been gone from this planet, I still think of her as being a spirit that, or spirit guide that guides even my doings even to this day. And then, like I said, that middle ground, there's a number of peers that I work with as well that we talk on a regular basis. I mean, I consider the two of you in that group, but also my good friend that I do the Road to the Apollo with. And that includes folks like Ray Pascal and Captain Newborn and even Martin Freed. So sometimes they even come, ironically, not from our own cultures, because Martin Freed is a photographer
Right.
of the
Okay.
Jewish background, but he's still somebody that we can sit there and chit chat with, even though he's not necessarily from the African American culture that you would think a Road to Apollo photographer would be with. But he can even relate to a lot of what we're doing, because Captain Newborn, when he did it as a veterans advocacy tool and all along those lines. So those are
That's
all
dope.
folks that would resonate with me in that kind of concept of what you were talking about.
Okay.
I hope
That's
that
pretty
answered.
cool. Yeah. Yeah. That was good. I just
Yeah,
was
for
wondering
sure.
what your space looked like. So that's cool. I appreciate you sharing.
Oh yeah, no doubt,
So
no
what
doubt.
we're on our point four talking about the importance of creating safe spaces for men. What does that look like for you? What are your thoughts on that?
Well, I mean, one of the safe spaces is you have to have a space that you feel comfortable being you. It's ironic that y'all were bringing that up, because I was talking about it was actually on one of my other podcasts that I host and all of those lines, how sometimes we are so busy putting up these different masks and all along those lines that we can
Mhm.
sometimes even lose who we are and everything. So you gotta have that space where you can be comfortable being yourself and all along those lines. And sometimes it can just be, as I've said before, going in that meditation space, maybe going out for a walk, maybe enjoying some of nature where you can reflect and even do some of that pause and all along those lines. And sometimes it can
Right.
even be a moment of what some people would call like idle thought. Because lately I've been on my phone playing a lot of logic games, but that can be something
Mhm.
to break the monotony and all along those lines.
Right,
So
right.
like one's called Family Tree, where you're literally figuring out people's kind of like family, fictional family tree, who's married to who and who's doing that and all along those lines. And then there's been some others that I've done that have been like logic puzzles and all in that space. And I used to be very active on Words with Friends, and there are a couple of other ones like that. So sometimes that can be your getaway space, or even just sitting there. And I think me and you and Gene have talked about that, and watching something that is, I won't say mindless, but you already know what the plots are, because sometimes you've seen them multiple times. But sitting there and
Right.
watching a show like Criminal Mind or NCIS, or even some of these relatively new shows like Chicago Police or even Bull, can be something that can, or Tracker, can be something that can break the monotony, and that you don't really have to overly think, but you can still enjoy the storyline while watching it, to break the monotony of your own daily struggles and daily efforts that you're involved in.
Right. Man, but I just think it's just exhausting, man. I mean, I'm just thinking about all the things that we as men go through and experience in the weight, especially an African American man.
Oh, yeah.
It's just exhausting, man. And
Hey, Coach, I got to teach you about something, because you just brought it up. Because sometimes the non-stressors can be just as stressing, because part of what was going on,
Yeah.
and the reason I wasn't as engaged as I usually am doing this show and everything, is one, a friend of mine who I opened with his podcast had come by with some meals, because he sometimes will provide a burger or a meal if after I've done his show earlier on Saturday. So I had grabbed something that he had provided from McDonald's, but I was also watching, and I hate to say it, they lost and everything, but sometimes you have your favorites, and we all can't be rooting for the Kansas City Chiefs. So I was actually watching Marquette go down to Creighton. So even though it can be a relief and a great release when your team is winning, then sometimes there's also a downer when your team goes down, as my team just did earlier today. But I know that they will still get a good ranking in terms of being in the top 20, and they will still have a good seeding both in the Big East tournament and in the Big Dance as well. So even though they took this loss, and they might even have, because they got to play Connecticut, the number one team, so they might even have another loss or two, I still know that they will do well and be at least in both tournaments, and will probably make a run in both if they don't win both of them. But sometimes that depression element can go on. I won't say depression, like that doubter element when you're sitting there going, like, dang. And it doesn't help that two of our players were hurt. One got sick. I think he had the flu, so he didn't even play from the hotel, even though he flew to Omaha. And the other one had an oblique injury, and you know about those injuries yesterday and everything. And so he was totally out, and they were praying that he would be there, but the prayers were not answered. But maybe he could come back to the Connecticut game and all along those lines. But so that can be something that you can be both excited about, but also depressed because it doesn't go the way you want it to.
Well, I know I started on a low because I had just finished watching KU get beat by Baylor.
Right, exactly. And that would be a similar kind of situation.
Yeah, I was like, oh, but I'm looking at the time. I'm like, man, am I going to get this game in before the show starts? So, yeah, I'm feeling that too.
Yeah. And that's actually a team that we did. And that's actually teams that we did beat earlier, KU, because that was in the tournament. We beat y'all and then turned around and lost to Purdue. So that's one of those wins that will help us get a good bid. So, yeah, we were feeling it when we played that game earlier this year. I think it was in Hawaii, if I remember correctly.
Cool. What were you saying, Gene?
No, I was saying, see, that's why I watch things that are more like one-person sport, like boxing, MMA, things of that nature, But I don't invest in it like emotionally because hey, if I ain't getting paid for it, I ain't worried about it.
Right. No, I love boxing too, MMA, all of that stuff too.
Yeah.
Well, hey, let's jump into this last point. We can really dig into this. Mark, you probably hang out for this because this is going to be a good one. The long-term effects of unaddressed trauma on men's mental and physical health, and the importance of breaking the silence and seeking healing.
Well, that was deep.
The long-term effects of unaddressed. I mean, we all have that. Never getting to the root cause, trauma on men's mental health and physical. Because, Gene, you've done such a masterful job of teaching us how the mental then turns into physical, and then we understand. We don't understand why we're sick and why we have, these diseases and stuff. And really the importance of breaking the silence and seeking healing. Jump into that.
Right. Yeah, definitely going back to what we were touching on before, the first thing is to acknowledge, that there is trauma. And the more you try to push it down and deny it, it becomes like, I know for me, anxiety was a big thing. Not dealing with trauma, then you push it down, and then now it's something that it's always in the back of your mind, and you're, always, all right. So what if? And I got to go back into this space with these people dealing with this trauma that it's like it becomes a spidey type sense. As soon as you get around these people, it's like, oh no, I don't want to.
I hope you don't sound like
that. I probably do. Oh no, I don't want to do it. Okay, all right. No, but and then what transpires later after it becomes a anxiety type thing, then it becomes a way that you react. It's like now you're always on eggshells, so it's like you're constantly jumpy. Like what? Oh, okay. Like ready to snap off or something, and then it becomes something physical. Now it's like you have high blood pressure because you put so much stress, on yourself by dealing with a situation or not dealing with a situation that now is part of your character. Now you're constantly on edge, walking on eggshells. There's a book by that name. Dealing with the stress and trauma unchecked in life, and it begins to reflect in your physical body. And now you got anxiety issues, and you got heart issues, and you can't sleep, and you can't eat, or you eat too much, and or whatever.
That's
So
good, man.
it's just like a snowball effect in essence when you don't address things, um, and eventually kill you earlier than you have to go. You know.
Right. We can think about that, Mark. What do you
I
think
mean,
about
that
that,
makes a
Mark?
lot of sense. That notion of what's going on and how you're going to make it relate and all along those lines. So, yeah, it can be very scary in that sense and everything. So,
I didn't hear.
Couldn't understand what you
oh,
said,
hold
Mark.
on. Hold on.
We didn't hear what you were saying, sir.
Hold on. Hold on. See if I can't get it straight.
Oh, we lost him for a second. Yeah, I think the issue of secondary trauma is huge. That this, I love how, like I said in the beginning, how you illustrated those 3 points, and we do that to ourselves, and then not to mention all the external traumas that happen to us over the course of time that go unaddressed, and it just wreaks havoc on our
Right,
mental state. I mean, it affects our memory, it affects our sleeping, our eating habits, our behavioral habits, our relationships with our, our spouses or girlfriends or uh, our children, our work relationships, brothers and sisters, uncle, aunt, all of it. It just affects everything.
right,
Um, and I love what you said. There needs to be a release. It's just it's this buildup. There's so many men that are literally a powder keg
right,
ready to explode. And, I think society wonders why, in particular, I know we get dubbed for this all the time as black men, why, considered to be violent. And I think overall black men aren't violent, but
right,
the ones that are, I mean, if you really do a deep dive of their life and understand what their life looked like, in the show a couple weeks ago, we talked about Maslow law, and the fact that a lot of these men have faced trauma since infancy, and
right,
they've never had their basic needs met. Um,
right,
there was no father in the home, or um, he was in and out, or maybe even a mother that was absent in their home, but they didn't have the two
right,
parent home. They didn't have stable income. They didn't have safety. And, maybe mom and dad didn't have income, and they're moving, hopping from place to place to place to place.
right,
They're in different schools and having to make new friends. And, their clothes are different. I mean, just so many different things. We can go on and on and on and on that
right,
build upon these traumas that then aren't addressed, and you move from childhood to adolescent into young adulthood and get married. Now you're a father, a husband, and you push down all of that now onto your children and your spouse.
right. Yep,
So now it just becomes generational. And I just
right.
think about like my
Cultural.
father. Yeah, not, yeah, thank you. Thank you. So I think about that. You went exactly where I was going. I think about my father. I think about my grandfather and the things that they dealt with. Now, being in this space of understanding, I can look back and listen to the stories of my father, or listen to the stories of my
Mhm.
grandfather, and see how that was pressed down onto me.
Yep,
And then knowing in that I pressed it down to my sons, and I got to go back
right,
and fix that.
yep.
So
Yeah, yeah. But like you said, the more we look back at those roots of the trauma, like you realize it goes deep, and like you said, it comes. A lot of it often comes from situations that way precede your life. Now it's become cultural across, you know, the culture of men. Period, especially black men in America. Where we have these don't let people see you cry. I'm trying to merge two words. Um, don't let people see you cry. Let see you vulnerable, and it creates a false sense of strength. It's an outward strength, but inwardly, we're like a piece of paper that can be blown away at
Falling
with
apart.
the slightest wind. Yeah, exactly. So we have to do that deep dive and even just like check our own character, even just in life. Sometimes I sit back and think about aspects of myself that I want to change this about me, because I realize this is not really beneficial. So let me break down this thing and find out where it started, so I can uproot it and plant another seed in its place. You know, and that's just the process. We all go through our outward things and just realizing what built you, and then looking back at the foundation, being like, do I want to keep that around or do I want to extricate that?
Right.
Do
That's
I want
good,
to put
brother.
something in its place? You know, I think we need to take those times to really sit back and look at the things and the traumas that built us and see what we want to change. Yeah, I
Right.
think that'd be a great step.
Can y'all hear me now? Because what I was going to say is partially is that oftentimes we are too busy being afraid of revealing that inner hurt or that inner trauma that we're going through, and all along those lines. Because a lot of times people are too busy not wanting to expose themselves to the truth of their own life, and all along those lines. Because a lot of times folks will
Mm,
sit there and rest on things, and as you had just said earlier, Coach, a lot of times that inner hurt and that inner trauma can be gnawing at us. It can be impacting us both physically and mentally and emotionally and even psychologically, and definitely that soul journey in a number of other ways. Because particularly as men, a lot of times we don't want to show that what people would call that softer side, because a lot of times we want to put out that image of always being tough and being the kind of person that's in charge and all along those lines, because there's that whole notion of nurture versus nature and a lot of other things in that aspect. And a lot of times we want to be as folks like to put it, those warriors and that warrior spirit, but sometimes you got to let that soft side come out as well, because in my mind we all have no matter what your gender is, a masculine and a feminine side, and sometimes
right.
don't want to know
Right.
that, and they want to kind of hide that aspect of their life. They want to sit there and just kind of like go with the I'm hard, I'm tough kind of attitude. But we know that sometimes that soft side needs to be shown as well, and not just with our kids, because a lot of times if you have kids, you'll relate to that soft side with your kids, or if you're like me and you don't have any, you'll relate to it for those that you mentor or a caretaker of, or like that uncle kind of feeling that I know sometimes when I'm with my nephews, I might show some of that soft side and all along those lines. But a lot of times, even if you are not seen as being tough, because a lot of guys are not as tough as even their persona might put out there, you want to give that notion and everything. I mean, how often have we seen, and then I'll get off the soapbox, the brothers that get upset if you just happen to walk by them and scuff their shoes and all along those
Oh
lines.
my
You
God.
like buckle up and get tough, and you're sitting there going like, hey, look, I wasn't doing it intentionally. I wasn't trying to like
Right.
damage
Right.
and all along those
Right.
lines. But then you got folks that want to buck up on you, and then I think it's become less of a problem. But there are still folks that want to think that you are trying to damage their image, even though it might have been just like an accidental bump that you had with them, and all along those lines. But you got folks that want
It's
to
false
feel that
respect.
they are overly
Right.
tough.
Right.
Yeah.
Man, that's crazy.
Yeah. That's
That's
only
crazy.
outward because inside they soft. They soft as cookie dough.
Mm-hmm.
They soft as cookie dough on the inside. I mean, it's a shoe. Why?
Man,
Hey, you step on my shoe. Okay. Hey, my bad, brother. You just wipe it off and keep it moving. I mean, it's really simple.
but you know what, man? I used to have the mentality of, again, before the treatments and coming through trauma that I've had over the last 3, 4 years. I used to be the guy that when you encounter a person like that, I was taught a bully, you punch a bully in the mouth. You don't stand and have a conversation and debate with the bully. That person you step on the shoe, you knew it was an accident. You just punch, that's the person that, is a bully. You just punch in the mouth. You don't stand there and argue with
Right.
them. But now, man, the softer side of me comes out because I recognize that brother's hurting.
Mm-hmm.
Hmm.
That brother's hurting, and he probably has never seen the soft side of a man
Right.
to come at
Right.
him in that way. So now I've flipped that, and I've just watched how the Bible talks about a soft answer um, destroys or reduces wrath, and I've
Right.
just learned that, man, just coming back in response in goodness and kindness and understanding. and love back to that person, how it immediately diffuses that
Right.
situation. And
Right.
now you're able to actually, it's a bridge and a door. You're actually able to have a conversation.
Right. Yep. Yeah. That's grown. That's mature. And that's grown man stuff. It's like, bro, it was an accident. My bad. And then okay, okay, we cool, we cool, we cool. All right.
Yeah,
Have a good
yeah,
day.
yeah.
Have a good day.
Let's talk about it and not shoot each other.
Right. Exactly. Over a shoe scuff.
Over a shoe scuff. You just accidentally rubbed on, brushed on the shoe, and all along those lines. But they want to make it a like an act of war, and we got enough wars going on in the world. We don't need to
Man.
acts of war, particularly in our own communities and everything. Particularly, we got folks that are
Come
uh,
on, come
not
on.
wanting to step up to responsibilities, because I know a lot of times people are also concerned that we're not stepping up to our responsibilities. I'm like, well, last time I checked, it's good to have a village raise folks as well. So definitely,
Mhm.
you can't just leave the responsibility strictly on the males' side of the table, but definitely it needs to be having the female, whether it's a man child or a woman child, as well as just the
Right.
overall community. Because I'm a big supporter, and I know that there have been people that have used it as a cliche of it takes the village to raise any of our
Mhm.
young
That's a
people and
fact.
all along those lines. So that's something that I've
Amen.
always been taught, and definitely something that I believe in. So I think that definitely you
Yeah.
got to even sit there, and sometimes, I don't know what y'all think about this, but sometimes people are afraid of that notion because they don't want to speak to somebody because they're afraid somebody's going to come back to them and be like, you should have spoke to my child that way, or you should have done that to my child. But I think sometimes you
Which
can
is
just speak to
crazy.
this coach, that
Yeah.
you can let it go. You still got to have that responsibility. And if you see somebody doing something wrong, then sometimes you got to
You speak
call
up.
them out and all along those lines.
Yeah.
Right.
No, I'm 100%. I agree with that. You about to say, Gene?
Yeah, I was gonna say I agree with that. You wilding out. I'm about to say something to you. You don't have to like it. I
Yeah.
didn't ask you to like it. I'm just, hey, I'm putting you in check. Hey, I see you. Cut it out.
Yeah.
And that's
Let
just
me
that's
throw
just
this.
what a village does.
Right. Let me throw this at you guys. This just popped in my head as we're talking. Um, the trauma of social media and
Mm,
TV, especially in the black community as a
Man,
black man. And I think people that are not of our color don't understand and like, well, that didn't happen to you. But me just watching my brother in a video or on, live on the news or whatever, a meme being beaten by the police
right.
or being taken advantage of or disrespected. There's stuff going on in corporate America that they're revealing now with some of these law firms and financial firms. There's just so much
yeah,
going on. The mark of that leaves trauma on your mind, man.
Mhm.
Just
right.
I
Yeah,
mean,
secondary trauma.
yeah. Well, not just that trauma, but think about the trauma as to the way that the media portrays it. Because I mean, how many times do you see in any of our cities, and we're all in three separate areas of this country and everything? If you turn on the news, do you see a lot of the positive images that I know that there are positive people
Nah,
doing things positively in the community, or do you see the constant portrayal of people committing crime or doing things that are harmful to the
right,
portrayal of our community versus the positive? And even some of the, I mentioned that, I mean, some of them I like watching, but even some of the TV images is always us in oftentimes a negative light and playing the
mm-hmm,
right.
bad guy and the villain and all in that space. So
mm-hmm.
definitely we got to have some more
DM,
positive images also. And
right.
I would argue that even though I'm part of the media, that we got to have the media do a better job of revealing, kind of like the work that you're doing and the work that Jane's doing, and even some of the things that I'm doing, instead of just always covering the negative Nelly kind of things that are going on.
Right, right, exactly,
Right.
man. I love that. I
Agreed.
love that.
Yeah, and I love, like you said, the society itself and just how we portray ourselves in art. Like you said, there's a lot of negative shows. There's so many, what do you call it, BMF and
Mhm.
uh, Ghost, or all of them shows like that. There's so many, got so many shows like that. There's so little, so few shows just showing us. I was watching a documentary last week, I believe it was, just about black kings, in
Mhm.
Egypt and things of that nature. Like we need more of that stuff because it,
Right.
it, it annoys the hell out of me to see so many um, movies and documentaries of us as slaves. Like that was like we have a vast history as a
Right, right.
people, but all we hear about. is from slavery to now. What about
Mhm.
the years? I mean, because you have to think the last Moorish stronghold was taken down in 1492. So there's from the beginning of time as we know it to 1492. That's a big chunk of history of the world where there were
Mhm.
people who looked like us who ran the world.
Mhm.
Mhm.
But then we had this chunk here, this 400, 500 year chunk where they just want to show us as slaves. And then from there, it's like, nah, we need more. We need
Mhm.
more than this. And the
Yep.
BMF stuff and stuff like that, to me, it just kind of perpetuates, the slave mentality. So you're enslaved in your mind. So you take over a block of people by selling a drug that you know is killing the people in the community. And this is how you make your fortune. You know what I'm
You're
saying?
living. Yeah, that's just crazy.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah,
man,
so
another
Need
good
more.
show.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, for sure, y'all. Always doing a great job. So I think it's
Another
time
good
for us to
show.
get that great song that Gene's got out there. Let folks see this amazing music that he's got going on in that space and everything, because he's always got some amazing things happening. So if you're ready, we'll get ready to
Yes,
play
sir.
one of these amazing songs and check out what he's got going on. We're gonna have a third one come out in a little bit and everything. So we know we
Oh
got
yeah.
more material coming out, but let's check out this as we head out the door. But y'all are having another powerful discussion. But looking
Yeah,
forward to it.
come back and join us next week because we're talking about childhood trauma.
Wow.
Yes, Lord.
Man, does every man in America need to talk about childhood trauma?
Yeah.
Yes.
So
It'll be a great one.
buckle up, Gene. It's gonna be a hard one,
Oh
man.
yeah. I know. I
Mark,
know.
Mark, it's gonna be a tough one next week,
I
bro.
know it. I hear you.
So,
Cool.
Let's go for it. Thanks for joining us. We
mhm.
are Unbreakable Soul. See you next week. Stick around for this music
Next week.
video by G was in the Solar System. Stand up.
Cool. We get on out of here.
Heard the news today, the police took another life. Gunshots rang out, even though he had his hands held high. Yo, I'm sick and tired to walk my brother's short lines. Need to come together, set a plan, and then mobilize. Oh, what are we gonna do? What are we gonna do? What are we gonna do about all the hell that we're going through? Now stand up, shout out into the walls of Babel on your feet. Stand up, come on y'all, and let's make some history. Stand up, rise up and know you ain't gotta follow, you can lead. Stand up y'all, we can do this, you and me. Monsanto monopolized the whole grocery line. So we all gon' have 12 toes, 3 thumbs, 3 lives. If we keep in sheep, these wolves are gon' rob us blind. Let's occupy our mind space, cause the revolution won't be televised. Oh, what are we gon' do? What are we gonna do? What are we gonna do about all the hell that we're going through? Now stand up, shout out into the walls of Babel on your feet. Stand up, y'all, we can do this, you and me. Stand up, rise up and know you ain't gotta follow, you can lead. Stand up, y'all, we can do this, you and me. Oh, mercy, mercy me. The government should nurture and when will all these wars be done? Hopefully before another moment has the money. Yeah. some history. Stand up, rise up, you know you ain't gotta follow. You can lead. Stand up, y'all. We can do this, you and me. Stand up, shout out into the walls of Babylon, undefeated. Stand up, come on, y'all, and let's make some history. Stand up, rise up, you know you ain't gotta follow. You can lead. Stand up, y'all. We can do this.